And I'm delighted that both Claus and Karen have joined us this afternoon, or joined me. Let me ask the first question to Karen. Mm-hmm. Now, Karen, you talked earlier about your journey to the cloud, and obviously we know Intapp Time is a part of that journey. So how do you envisage Intapp being part of that journey into the cloud?
I think Time will be the first Intapp product that we move to the cloud, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, it's probably the easiest, if I can be honest, the whole risk management compliance piece. We kind of think that's a good start. And we also are we've had Intapp terms forever and have never done it. It was going to be our priority project, and it's never been done for various reasons within the risk team and resourcing, and actually to talk to some discussions we've had on it's actually quite hard getting terms in because it's quite a lot of effort. But of course there's the term piece. Absolutely. And terms is already on the cloud. So it is the natural thing, and that will be starting over the coming months.
Claus, you talked earlier about your cloud journey, and you talked about the amount of money you had to pay just to ensure that you were comfortable. What is cloud like on the continent? You know, how is the perception of law firms in moving to the cloud on the continent? And apart from asking people to go down your journey and spend that amount of money, is there any tips or considerations that you would suggest a law firm think about before their cloud journey?
I think the first part of it is you actually need to have a cloud strategy, because just saying that we have a cloud-first strategy, that's not a strategy, that's just a timeline. Putting stuff on a slide and say we will move this into the cloud by this date, that's not a strategy. The strategy part is why. We just heard people talk about how can we get the maximum value of the money we already spent on the licenses we pay Microsoft, for instance. So that's a financial part of it, getting that in there. Then there's the why do we want this product, or why do we want to push to the cloud with this? Is that because our end users, our colleagues in the firm are mobile? Are they global or are they local? That will help shape why you pick a certain product or certain platform. And then when you get to that point where you narrow it down based on those criteria, you can start working with what I think is part of your question, is that security and compliance in this. How do we tackle someone like Microsoft or AWS when we ask them questions about how is security done? Can we make this change to it? No, you cannot. You cannot make a single change to it, but you can adopt the way that you bring that into the company, into your structure, into your IT platform. We heard Karen talk about encryption with your own key. That's a really important point to address, to say what can we do with the platform to limit the risk of security and compliance issues. That needs to be pulled into the cloud strategy, all those questions. So it's more than just cloud first, it's all those other things as well you need to hit on. So that's why it cannot be IT just running a cloud strategy. You need to pull in risk and compliance and so forth.
And you talked in one of the other sessions before about references. And references, we're obviously very grateful for the amount of references that you provide for us. As part of that reference conversation, is cloud high up on the agenda in that reference conversation?
Yeah, there's a lot of people asking same questions as the room here has raised today. How can you get your clients to accept what you're doing? What you have the 1% left? How did you deal with that? Some of the answers I get in those reference groups, when I ask that question, is we didn't tell the client. But you have to answer all the compliance security assessment sheets they send you all the time. So they ask you where the data is. So how do you answer that truthfully? And then the answer is, we do that. We do answer it, but we never get a pushback. Yeah. So they just accept it. It's like no one actually reads what we write in those assessments. So that's a lot about the talk. Why should we push and spend so much effort on it, since no one actually seems to care on the other end? In those groups, there's a lot of talk about that. Are we wasting time? But no, we're not, because we have to do it. We might get a visit from a government entity wanting to see what have you done to protect this data. So we need to do it. So obviously we do it. But we also share these assessments, honestly. I have Morten sitting over here. We've been talking about the assessment we did on One Place, the assessment we did on 365 in Asia. Why shouldn't I share that with my colleagues in the business? It's nothing secret. It's information about vendors. So do that.
So Amos talked about outside council guidelines earlier. You've just alluded to them as terms being a driver for this project. What is the problem with outside council guidelines at the moment and time recording? Are you involved in that? Are you aware of?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of problems with outside council guidelines, being the volume of them, all of which need reviewing, responding to, exactly to your point, truthfully, follow up, and will involve many people across the firm, because there'd be billing, there'd be infosec, there'd be risk, there'd be compliance, there could be some marketing elements to them. They've always been difficult. So we have the technology to help with that, but you have to put all the time to make it, which I think was to Massimo's point. You've got to put all the time, and with the right level of people. You can't just farm that out to somebody junior, because they've got to understand what those requirements are and interpret those and respond to them properly. Now, the whole point, obviously, is terms, is the more you get in, the more it learns and the more it can predict what your answer would be. Because if someone comes in and asks, do you encrypt your data? You should be able to get to a point that it will go yes, and this is how, and it produce sort of a standard paragraph. But it's getting to that point, and we have struggled with that, but primarily from resource and different priorities rather than tech. However, with the benefits of time, which is why we went to Intapp Time, was to link the two. So you as a lawyer are trying to do that, and it goes, you can't do that. We're not fully getting, because we don't have the data in terms. So this is the time, I think, let's move time to the cloud, let's re-looking at terms. And we have made huge strides in terms by actually, someone new was recruited into the risk team, she was put full-time on terms, I gave the risk team a full-time business analyst, and they've literally made great strides. But it's taken a lot of resource. It will all pay out, but it's getting to that point. I was quite interested to hear about the supplier, because I must say that isn't something I'd particularly considered, but that's also, because they're all linked up, aren't they? It's down the supply chain, so anything that you can do that helps you manage that supply chain has got to be a bonus. So that's something that I need to have another look at, I think.
Wonderful, thank you. As I look around the room, I see a lot of familiar faces. I see a lot of clients that are currently using Time. I do genuinely believe that this move to the cloud and this embracing of the technologies within our platform is going to deliver you substantial business benefits. Linking these terms with your time, presenting it at the point of time entry, if there is compliance with the billing terms, I think will significantly help not only the process, but ultimately reduce write-offs, because you're less likely to have bill disputes. Claus, Sammy and I came to meet you lots of times in Copenhagen, not because we wanted to see you, but Copenhagen is a fantastic city. I'm joking. Rude. I'm joking.
Very rude.
It was what were they called? The chocolates with licorice in them.
I know.
I remember one of our meetings was with your managing partner, and he looked at the pitch and chatted with you and chatted with the team. And one of the things he said to us was, wow, I'll give my lawyers back their Sunday afternoons. So I've got two questions there. First of all, do lawyers really record their time on a Sunday? Second of all, how has implementing Intapp Time reduced the burden of time recording on your lawyers?
The answer is yes to the first part. Yeah, they did actually use the Sundays for time recording.
Wow.
Very sad for them, spending time on that on a weekend. And I think why he was particularly interested in that was that this is stupid work sitting on a Sunday away from the family doing that. And that's what it's all about, giving time back to the lawyers instead of spending or wasting time on something like that in your spare time, free time. Second part is that when I earlier said about that we want the lawyers to work and do the stuff themselves. So that's a really important part of this capture. I said automation as much as possible. And capturing time automatically is definitely fitting or checking that box. I would say for us to pick Intapp Time with the capture possibilities that it has from what we came from, actually gave the Sundays back to the lawyers. Because I have a different story. That was the chairman. We have a very tall building similar to this one, not as tall, but he was standing in the elevator at lunch, going up, and then when the Claus was just closing, I was looking him in the eye, and then he put his arms in the air and just, I freaking love Intapp Time. And the reason he said that
video?
was he's in an M&A and he's doing a lot of different stuff all day. So he had so many post-its on his screen.
Yeah.
And those are all gone because he could just Tinder swipe. That was what we called it. Just accept it. Yes to that, and yes to that.
So the capture bit there is really interesting because when we introduce firms to the concept of capture, naturally there's a lot of fear around this in that, gosh, it's going to be Big Brother, it's going to be monitoring. How did you overcome that? How did you teach and advise your lawyers that this isn't about overlooking them, it's more about encouraging them to capture more time?
We had a guy in IT that accidentally said, we're doing that already. We can see everything what they do.
Absolutely.
Why are they so scared about that? Never say that. So what we did, coming back to the point about why are we doing this? This is to create the potential and the benefits of not spending so much time on it. So we phrased all the benefits and all the potential that we could get out of capturing that data and said to the people, this is what you get if we do that. So they could accept that based on that. And then we also said, no one can see this data.
Yeah.
We're not able to open up and look into this data. So don't be afraid that your boss is seeing what you're browsing on your browser. No one can see that except you. So those two things that actually ironed it out.
Yeah, exactly the same. And, you know, when we started this project, I actually named the partners that would raise this, and I was right. I should have had a sweepstake on it because you just knew they would be, and we just showed it's all dynamic. It's not, we're not, you know, this thing of IT is snooping through all your things. It's like, I've really got better things to do. So we actually prepared for this knowing it would come up rather than then go, oh, how does that actually work? It was like, oh yeah, we know about that, and this is, and then that did all go away.
I've got a couple more questions. I'm going to choose this one first, actually, because we see so much on social media, in the press, about the death of the billable hour. A, is it going to happen? And B, if it does happen, does that mean the end of time recording? Both of you.
Shall I? Yep. No, I don't think it will. I mean, we've been talking about alternative fee arrangements forever. We have a whole tools that will enable you to model a fixed price or blended fees or whatever it might be. In our organisation, it changes significantly from country to country. There are some countries it's all billable hour, there are others it's mainly a fixed price. And we just work with that. And I think that will always be. There will always be a billable hour. I don't think we'll ever completely go. But even if there's a fixed fee, you've still got to capture what you're spending on it, or else you're going to go horribly, horribly over budget. And the easiest way of doing that is through time recording. So, no, I don't think time recording is going to disappear. It just needs to offer maybe the flexibility for areas that are not always by the billable hour. But then your practice management systems need to do that as well, because the general finance or practice management system is very much geared around there's a unit of time.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a way to go there as well, I think.
Wonderful. Klaus?
Yeah, I can just echo that. I think you still need a way to look into whether or not the fixed fee is actually, are you earning money on that? And you need to have some sort of insight into the cost of the company, and the cost is ours, part of it at least. So the time capture part is definitely still relevant in order to do that assessment of are you earning money or not, even though it's fixed fee.
And I guess, so just taking that a step further as well now, both of your firms, because I've met with you quite a few times, are quite progressive in terms of the pricing function within law firms and leveraging time data to help with that pricing conversation. So do you see that as being key? Do you see the pricing conversation as being something that should be looking at time data? Do you see time as being intrinsic with pricing?
Yes, it has to. So that's the very short answer, because it is already today.
Perfect.
I agree, but I think we could do more. I think, and that often comes back to lack of good data, but it's pretty likely what's in your time recording system is because that lawyers need to put that because they need to get a bill, and B, they need to be given because as part of their remuneration will be based on billable time. but be it by the hour, fixed price or whatever. So I think if you were going to use any data for pricing, then your time recordings are probably the best start.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but you also need to trust the data, right?
Well.
So if we heard that earlier, rubbish in, rubbish out.
Yeah.
So if the data going in the time registration is not accurate or actually truthful to what was the time spent on, so leakage or whatever in terms of slipping, didn't capture it all, then the price is wrong.
Yeah.
And that comes back to, do you actually trust the data? So it does kind of loop back.
So do you see pricing as being a tool to help you record time better, because as you're building out a budget, you're introducing taxonomy, your phases, your tasks, your activities, and actually if that filters through to time recording, you have better time recording practices and ultimately better data, which again loops back into pricing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think you can resolve the person in the chair that's putting the data in, because there will always be either undertime or overtime recording, depending on. And that's just because people will go, what did I do all day? Type conversation. We try and encourage truthful time recording, even if we push it up or write it off, because you need to understand, if we think that that particular phase was going to take 20 hours and it's taken 40, we need to try and understand what that is. But people are. In my previous role, I had to do time recording when I was a consultant, and there is a bit of, you've got to get to a number.
Yeah,
be it right or wrong. That's you have to,
it's the human element.
Quite difficult. Yeah.